Third phase of moon. Third.
Is there a secret space program harnessing the energy off the sun? The big question remains, and we want to find out. And we've got videos from NASA themselves who showcase evidence, and they have no explanation to what it is, including people from the ground on the planet Earth filming the sun and capturing massive craft exiting in and out of the massive star itself. What is going on with our sun? We've got a special for you. We've got Corey Goode along with Dr. Michael Salla and Jordan Sather. They go over a mystery of what maybe happened to planet Earth thousands of years ago that involved the sun. Now, before we get to that, I want to share with you this latest video that's coming in. We're going to be supplying the original links below so you can take a look at it for yourself. I want to get your opinion. What is going on here? Is there some kind of massive craft exiting in and out of the sun, or is this some kind of optical illusion? Well, this is why I asked the question, and I want to get your opinions below. Please leave them in the comments. Let's just share the video for a bit. Here it is. Now, let's get to this, the exclusive interview with Corey Goode, Dr. Michael Salla, and Jordan Sather in regards to their theory, the Space Force and the Sun. Check it out. The CIA document, Adam and Eve, we're going to break it down with Corey Goode along with Dr. Michael Salla, including Jordan Sather, from Destroying the Illusion. It's happened in the past and it will happen again. Corey Goode's going to tell us about the secret space program along with Dr. Michael Salla's insight. Is there a secret that we need to be told? Enjoy this new investigation right now.
A CIA document was released not too long ago. It's called the Adam and Eve document. And in that document, it discusses that scientists had done studies of what would occur during a pole shift. And it's the worst case scenario, 700 mile per hour winds, totally biblical proportion types of cataclysms. Well, that's not quite how scientists expect it to play out now. This was a study done in the 1960s. They knew very little about the atmosphere, how it works, how it wouldn't just fly around the planet like they postulated in the 60s. Now they know more about how the wind systems work, and it wouldn't be as bad. But that information has come out recently, and there have been some scientific papers that I might be able to give you to link here of scientists finding signs of solar matter on the back of the moon during the Apollo missions. They were bringing back this black glass and some other material, and it turned out that it was actual material ejected from the sun. And this was also found on Mars.
So what you're saying is the moon at one time was in an opposite direction. So the dark side of the moon was facing the sun at one point?
Well, the dark side of the moon was facing the sun at the moment that it had this 360-degree mass coronal ejection, where it sent solar matter in all directions. And this occurs on a cycle every 25,000 years, 12,000 years, 4,000 years, different intensities. And it's kind of like a pulse that we're finding out that other stars have. We've noticed that Alpha Centauri had a flash not too long ago. And a couple of other stars that we've been tracking have periodic flashes. So we're finding out that these stars are releasing pressure so that they don't go supernova at some point. They're having smaller novas to release mass and pressure.
Recent CIA release of this polar shift investigation.
Right, so my understanding of that is simply what I've seen through Ben Davidson of Suspicious Observers, And it essentially looks like it's a book that was classified by the CIA, and it details the polar shift, the not just geomagnetic, but literal geophysical polar shift. So not only do we have the electromagnetic poles of our Earth ready to shift, but we also have, that could mean also an Earth tilt. And I believe Ben Davidson was detailing how that tilt could go 90 degrees and then back, which is very intriguing. And the reason, of course, the CIA classified it is that is a massive, massive red pill, basically, that if the people knew about it, well, that would confirm a whole lot of stuff from ancient history, a lot of scripture and text that they were trying to tell us. They don't want that stuff legitimized. And they also, of course, don't want people to really understand what's going on with our sun and the electric universe model. They want to prop up their standard model physics that is tons of misinformation mixed in to sell their agenda with, basically. If people were to realize what our sun actually is, what it's going to do, they would live their lives a whole lot differently, and they wouldn't be trusting what's told to us by the authorities quite as much.
What we're seeing with the possibility of a pole shift is that, first of all, the magnetic field of the planet is starting to collapse. It's diminishing in strength more and more, and this makes the planet more susceptible to solar rays that are pouring in, especially at the poles, because of the shape of the Earth's magnetosphere. So as more solar rays come in, because we're at this kind of point where the Earth's magnetic field is collapsing and moving really, really quickly. I mean, just recently, the World's Aviation Authority had to realign the instrumentation for measuring the poles. There's a global authority that's responsible for setting up the positioning of the magnetic poles so that you can have the GPS system functioning at the optimal level. They've had to actually accelerate the readjustments that they do every 5 years because the magnetic poles are moving so quickly. So this is a sign of the magnetic poles actually not only realigning but also weakening very, very quickly. And because of that weakening, we're having more solar rays coming in, hitting the Earth, going into the poles, and that's triggering the possibility of a pole shift. We're talking about a geophysical pole shift. And this is where the physical poles actually realign, so the Earth's crust can shift, as was predicted by people like Charles Hapgood back in the 50s. And his book, The Earth's Shifting Crust, was actually endorsed by Albert Einstein, who wrote the foreword to it, because the data that Hapgood had assembled was so compelling that Einstein thought that this was a real possibility. We could have a pole shift. And so this possibility is now really looking very, very likely with the magnetic pole weakening so quickly, and we're seeing evidence of the pole shift happening much more quickly than we ever thought possible.
So what are the implications if this polar shift happened in the most extreme way? Would we be the lands shift from one side of the globe to the other in a matter of 24 hours?
It could, yes, in a matter of a day. It would be the worst day on the planet Earth. They've predicted that the planet could either shift in phases or do a 90-degree or more shift. And they've actually found, geologists have found signs of prior equators in the ocean, where they think that equators were in the past. They're now at different angles because the Earth has shifted. And this occurs every 200,000 years or so, an actual polar shift. And we're well overdue.
So you've been in some of these top secret underground military bunkers. Would these engineers, the engineering behind it, survive this polar shift in the case scenario that you're talking about?
That's a good question. Now, they found signs that people had survived these types of things in the past by doing that. In Turkey, I can't remember the name of the site, the underground site where it looks like someone had carved out the big tunnel network, and they had areas for livestock and for thousands of people. Well, that would have been a perfect place to take a population if you saw the signs and knew that this solar event was about to happen. And we know what those signs are in the sky. And we found out that the symbols that we found in petroglyphs in ancient caves were depictions of electroplasmic discharges that they were seeing in the sky just before a major event occurred. So that was a sign that they knew that the Earth was about to shift again, or whatever their beliefs told them was occurring when that happened.
So there are certain indications now that are foretelling that this event may be happening soon in our lifetime?
Yeah, I believe it's in like 1982 or 86. There was a scientist named Paul Lavallee, I believe his name was, and he was postulating that our solar system was moving into a more energetic part of the galaxy, out of the protection of some other stars and out to where more cosmic rays were going to hit us. And as those cosmic rays come in, they come into our sun, and they also come into the Earth. And as they come into the Earth, they begin to heat the center of the Earth more. And as it's heating, you begin to see more energetic storms on the surface, which we've seen. You begin to see volcanoes starting to pop, which we're starting to see. More earthquakes. All of these things are signs of the times, so to speak, but it's all scientifically explainable. They're side effects of this energetic wave coming in.
So it's been speculated that maybe the history books or even scientists have gotten all wrong as far as the extinction of the dinosaurs, the great floods, that it was attributed to a polar shift versus an asteroid or meteor.
Right, yeah, and the problem with mainstream science these days is that they have data, but then they have this solution already predetermined in their minds, and they want that data to fit that model, so they throw out the data that's inconvenient for that. When you actually look at all of the data holistically, like you said, it actually brings the polar shift into the picture. We actually see marks on planets throughout our solar system, like Mars. You can see a big gash into the Martian surface. You can find this on Earth as well. It's covered up more because oceans, forest, and whatnot. But especially when you look at Mars, you see that big gash. That's reminiscent of a sort of electric strike that hit the planetary surface. Now, if you couple that in with the idea that we're in a solar activation cycle, and it is actually a cyclical nature of our sun to pop off what's called micronovas, or huge solar flares, solar flashes, many different names we could call it, and then that in turn affects all the other planets in the solar system in various ways. Boom, there's an effect of it, the electroplasma discharge on the Martian surface.
So you've been doing a lot of research with the secret of, basically the declassified Space Force. Is this maybe in preparation for a major polar shift? What's your investigated? How's this gone in that direction?
What I think's going on with the Space Force is that, of course, we have black budget programs that are taking in billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars, and they've been in existence since 50s and 60s, if not before that. So if we do have an alliance, group of white hats, call it what you will, trying to gain power, control, and disclose various hidden truths to the public, well, they need to, number one, gain access to these black projects, these secret space programs, and they need an avenue to disclose these things with. So what better way to do that than to create a sixth branch of the military, call it the Space Force, get the military to get control, gain access to these programs, and then use that as a way to start slowly disclosing this to the public. Now, I wouldn't doubt that in the high levels of, say, this alliance, that they know very well about the polar shift and the solar flash, and they're making preparations for it. One thing I've been thinking of recently is all these booms we've heard around the country. Booms people are hearing everywhere. Could be such that maybe there's some underground complexes being built out to house a certain amount of people around the country if that solar flash did go off. There could be preparations being made, absolutely, for them to protect as many people as possible and help us go through this, not just solar flash and solar shift, but it's going to affect our planet too, our planet, us, our DNA, our consciousness. And we're going to need a lot of help getting through that, of course, because how many people out there are wholly ignorant of the whole topic.
So what's the implication if there's a sudden pole shift? What are the ramifications for humankind? Is there a danger?
The big danger with the pole shift is exactly how much are the Earth's poles going to realign. If we actually have the Earth's crust realigning by a number of degrees, maybe just a few degrees, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, I mean, there'll be really tremendous repercussions. Not only will the magnetic poles realign, but the actual Earth will shift.
So there's this new term called the micronova. Can you tell us about it?
So a micronova is a solar flare that's X100 or above, which is just a massive solar flare. And what it's doing is it's emitting an enormous amount of plasma. So if it actually occurs, you would have a micronova emitting this enormous energy, this plasma that would go out throughout the solar system, and it would slam into the planets with the force of asteroids. The kind of devastation you could expect from an asteroid impacting the Earth, that wouldn't be nearly as much as if you had a micronova sending out this enormous ball of plasma going out throughout the solar system and hitting the Earth, like with all of the energy coming directly from the sun, far exceeding anything that any one asteroid could do. So this would be devastating the entire surface of the planet facing the sun. So anything in that category of a micronova, an X100, could bring about major Earth catastrophe all over that area facing the sun.
What about our governments prepping for this or letting the American public know that this event may be coming up in the near future? Will they keep it a secret from us?
They'll keep it a secret. They plan to, although it's starting to come out now because we're getting so close to the time period, in the next decade. But for decades, they've been spending a certain percentage of the gross national product of each country on building these underground bunkers to help people survive. And there are going to be people that are given golden tickets and they're brought down into these places. I've mentioned that these solar sneezes that we kind of jokingly call them occur on a cyclic basis, and they've happened back into antiquity. And we have information that a army whistleblower is being prepared to come forward to bring a lot of very interesting information about what they've been doing in the Grand Canyon. A lot of people, if you study the U.S. Army's activity in the Grand Canyon, they took over that area, a couple hundred years ago, and took a lot of it away from the natives, of course. What they found is a cavern system that goes deep down into the earth, just giant cracks, basically, that go deep down into the earth that you can navigate fairly easily. And they open up into larger caverns. And in those larger caverns, they found big adobe villages that were built, broken pottery. It was very obvious that a population had survived there for a long term. And they found a lot of other interesting things, including giants with elongated skulls. And that's information that I'm told that this U.S. Army whistleblower is going to be bringing out very soon. And I don't think they're going to be contacting me. They may contact you guys or someone else out there. But they're being prepped.
Do you think this is preventable? Any kind of technology would be able to prevent the polar shift?
No, this is a natural cycle. This happens to be a solar system that has a very turbulent cycle. And we reported on this information in our movie Above Majestic, which we talked with you about before. It's on iTunes and Amazon. And we're going to be expanding on this topic greatly in our follow-up to Above Majestic.
So there's obviously preparation going on, underground bases, facilities being built, and people are behind in the construction in regards to this. Mm-hmm. How are they keeping them silent and not getting the word out that, hey, we're building this in preparation for a polar shift?
Very good question. And the answer to this helps understand not just building underground bases, but building spacecraft, building really anything involving these black projects. And the first answer to that is compartmentalization. So when you have these engineers, these scientists, these developers compartmentalized in these different projects, you can literally have somebody working on something different in the next room. You have no idea what they're working on, even though you're right next to them. You could have a group of engineers building, say, a spacecraft, and they're all building small parts of it, Everybody's building a different part. They have no idea what they're building it for. They're not told. They're dialed in with their orders, and they're just told to do this, so they do that. And then you get 1,000 people building 1,000 different parts. Then you have just a couple individuals, maybe a handful of them, working to put it all together for the final production. So only a couple people know the full scope of the operation. Compartmentalization is very important to understand when trying to, of course, analyze what's going on with all these programs, but also the idea of threat. So many individuals are threatened, they're blackmailed, they're threatened with harm, violence, could be paid off. A few of them could be paid off. They could also be threatened with losing their jobs, losing their careers, whatever it is needed to keep them shut up. So yeah, they sign the NDAs, they sign the non-disclosure agreements, but then if they do still let some tidbits of information out, because these people are monitored, their phones are monitored, and it's usually a 2-degree monitoring, so they don't only monitor you, they monitor the people you talk to and the people they talk to. So it's a couple degrees, so they can keep it clamped down. They have the intelligence of, make sure no leaks happen with the project. So it's a multi-step process in how they keep this all secret.
So what kind of indicators would we be seeing that if this event were coming up that we'd notice?
Solar flash pole shift.
Yeah.
So we are already seeing some indications that this is coming soon. Having to do with the Earth, we're seeing the both north and south magnetic poles track. They're tracking faster and faster. It's exponentially faster. So they just had to totally redesign the world geomagnetic model because of how fast these poles are shifting. So not just that, but they also found that there's these particles being emanated from Antarctica. Neutrinos, I believe they are. This has never happened before. Could that be new cosmic rays coming in? Some sort of symptom that we're moving towards this solar flash. And then also there's all sorts of plasma, electroplasma anomalies we're seeing on this Earth. Noctilucent clouds are one. Noctilucent clouds are pretty incredible, and I've seen them before with my naked eye. They're pretty rare, but they're becoming much less rare, which is the interesting part. Noctilucent clouds are not really clouds like water vapor. They're actually ionized plasma up in the atmosphere, and it's 50 miles up, which is 10 miles higher than the highest water vapor clouds, cirrus clouds. These are 50-mile high clouds, and they glow. They're glowing because it's ionized plasma. Now, normally these noctilucent clouds are only found over the poles, but in recent years they've been finding them farther and farther away from the poles, almost as far south as, at least from the North Pole, as, say, Kentucky, Middle America. I've seen them in Washington State with my own eyes, and I was wondering, what is that? That's one symptom that we're moving towards a whole shift. Not just that, but plasma anomalies. The European Space Agency last year was seeing plasma ropes above the North Pole. They didn't even know what to call it or what was going on. So there's all sorts of weird things happening that lets us know we're getting very close to it.
Do you think this secret space program is a basically effort in regards to maybe possibly relocating human civilizations to
The way they, the carrot that they gave all of these countries secretly to get them to give a certain percentage of their GDP that was going to underground bases and a secret space program was what they called a continuity of species program, that they were going to relocate humans underground on different planets and planetoids in our solar system and in the closest 13 stars, so that if there was if our sun went supernova, humanity would survive. That was the plan. And so they started getting all of these funds, and they started building, like China is building all of these underground facilities to where they'll bring people from each country. It won't just be for Chinese people. They're designated, and it's a world government-owned operation. And it's the same with the secret space program. That secret space program has been going out there looking for signs to prove that this solar event was going to happen, and then to find a way to relocate humanity or a portion of us so that we survive.
So do you think the major media isn't letting us know, or they're forced not to let the people know?
Absolutely. Number one, the mainstream media, they just don't know. They're ignorant because they're told to report on. Their focus is in so many other topics that they have no idea about this sort of stuff that we're talking about. Number two, if they do catch wind of it, want to report on something, they can't. They'll lose their job, again, threatened, whatever the case, to shut them up, not get this information out, which is why the only way it's getting out is through independent citizen journalists on social media. And this is why social media is becoming so censored, because they don't want to get many of these topics out there. They don't want the people connecting the dots.
Are you taking any preparations yourself for this event if it's coming up in the near future?
Getting my heart space centered, my mind space centered. I'm not going as crazy into the physical preparations as some people are. You know, they're getting their bomb shelters and their rations of food and whatnot. I have faith that all will be well. And, you know, one massive thing that's going to happen with this solar activation cycle, this quantum solar shift, as I sometimes refer to it as, is consciousness shift. These cosmic rays affect our DNA and affect our consciousness. So I think that is the most important thing to get centered and to ground and to make sure you have in nice order rather than the physical goods. I mean, that solar flash goes off, our grid goes down, great. Your food rations are only going to last you so long. In fact, it would probably be better if you just had the skills. You knew how to make a fire, you knew how to hunt, you knew how to do these particular things. That's important, and then also making sure your consciousness is on the right level to receive these particular downloads, whatever they are, whatever we get, whenever they're going to happen.
Do you have any heads up in regards to the polar shift? If it does go down, what would you be doing? What's your plan?
A good idea is to look where military bases have been put. I was instructed that the Ozarks and the Colorado area, which is where I moved, were safe zones. So I moved my family there really quickly after learning how valid this information is.
So this Adam and Eve CIA document
document,
recently released.
Very, yeah.
It's interesting that they call it Adam and Eve, almost like it's the creation, but then the end.
Yeah, and it's almost like, well, they should have called it the Noah's Ark story, I guess, because that's where that story came from, and it's a cycle that occurs. They think that the Young Dryas event that happened, what was it, 12,000 years ago or so? They think that was a solar event. They used to say it must have been a comet or a comet fragment that collided with the Earth's atmosphere. But now we're looking back and we're finding out that the KT boundary around the planet, when the dinosaurs were killed 65 million years ago, that very likely was a part of this cyclic solar event, and it helps us determine what happened to the Earth's atmosphere. These solar winds buffeting, they strip away the atmosphere, like it's what happened on Mars. And the Earth used to be much closer to the sun and used to have a much, much thicker atmosphere. And these events pushed the Earth away and stripped away the atmosphere. So we have a much lower barometric pressure now than we did when the dinosaurs were here. That's why they grew so big.
So the Great Deluge could have been attributed to a polar shift versus then a meteorite or asteroid strike.
Much of what they describe, when you hear the stars roll up like a scroll, and the stars are not where they were before, it's not because the stars moved, it's because the Earth moved.
And one thing we're trying to do in disclosing the Space Force, helping people understand the big picture of it, what it might be doing to help disclose these black projects and the missing money and the truth behind it all, is in the movie Above Majestic. We produced that, I helped produce it, and I had some speaking parts in it. And we were really trying to get people to understand how much money is missing. And all these things are connected. So we tried to really go big picture with the movie, but then hyper-focus on various parts with space, because that, of course, is a massive missing piece in a lot of people's understanding.
Is there a follow-up to Above Majestic?
Yeah, we'll be working on a follow-up to Above Majestic, tying in, really focusing on some of these partial disclosures, limited hangout disclosures, we could say. I almost sometimes call it like a deep state psyop disclosure in a way. What we're seeing right now is because so many people are waking up, taking to social media, spreading the truth, they're having a passion in sharing it and searching for it, and the censorship that's going on can't contain it. The deep state wants to distract people. They want to pull a fake disclosure to make people think that they're getting all the truth, and then they can brush the rest of the crimes under the rug. It's kind of the definition of a limited hangout. They volunteer a little piece of information, brush the rest away, and that'll be a focus of Above Majestic 2, is that, but also Antarctica, and so many things that we missed in the first movie, so many things that we can still tie in to help people get that understanding.